that wants to destroy the West.
Let me bring in Roland.
Just tell me how to address that,
Roland. Let me bring in Roland.
Piers,
you don't have an answer, do you?
Piers, Jillian, I've had to sit here and listen to y'all go back and forth. Can I please make this point?
Please.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
In today's video, Roland Martin humiliated Jillian Michaels on Piers Morgan Uncensored as a heated panel debate erupts over culture, violence, and accountability. As Jillian Michaels leans into familiar culture war talking points, Roland Martin pushes back with sharp context and history, exposing the cracks in her arguments live on air. So let's dive in and watch how Roland Martin shuts down Jillian Michaels on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
I disagree, Piers. I'll tell you what I think his intention was, and I will also preface by saying he did not get the message across. I feel like his intention was, hey, everybody, look, although this man hated me, and although he had Trump derangement syndrome, he ended it, putting us together with may they rest in peace, whatever. I feel like what his intention was even though I disagree with him, the guy died, and I'm sorry for him. He did that in possibly the worst way.
Stop it.
And I just don't feel like this is really shocking to anybody here. I feel like we've all been following Trump over the last 10 years. And as Wajahat said, that's his style. You like it or not, that's who he is. This tweet was wrong, but it's not, necessarily so shocking for all of us to see. And also, it shouldn't be going after bullshit.
I actually did find it quite shocking. And I have known Trump a long time. I am a friend of Trump's, good, bad, and ugly. And I got to say, Roland, there's no defense for this.
There's no defense. I don't know what the hell I just heard. Let's be clear. He has no morals, no values, no decency, no ethics, no principles. This is who he is. This is not a shock at all. He's a narcissist. He is someone who makes everything about him. And so this is who this man is. This is who he was, not in the last 10 years, Piers, but going back to when he was descending down those escalators. Going before that, the whole thing with Obama and the birther. This is who this man is.
Well, he's always been a trash talker.
So I'm not
Roland, hang on a second. Look, he's always been a trash talker. Right, he's a New York real estate guy. He's a trash talker, and I would say, I know, I'm going to come to that. In relation to general trash talk, my God, the left talk trash about him. Right, as I said in that clip. So all the Hitler stuff and Nazi stuff, all that, it's a two-way street. The trash talking. This is a particular thing. Which angered me. It angered me when I saw his reaction to Colin Powell dying, to John McCain dying. I just think there's just got to be, on all sides, when public figures like this die, whether they're great politicians or they're great movie people, whatever it is, there just has to be a basic decency. If people get killed or murdered or whatever it is, or die after great lives and careers, just either be decent or don't say anything.
Here's the deal. This all sides is nonsense. First, listen, the regular average person who's out there on social media, that's one thing. But it's called being a statesman for a reason. I'm literally sitting here, I grabbed my book, Master of the Senate, of LBJ, and it was amazing. Cairo talks about how LBJ, how when he was president, how he spoke and moved differently publicly than he did when he was majority leader of the Senate, because he saw the presidency and the respect for the institution. This person has none. This is no shock. There's a reason I don't even call him president, because he does not rise to the occasion in that way. This is who he is. He will degrade people. He will say these things. I am not shocked by it because he is despicable in this way. Well, and there's no defense. There's no, I think he meant, he meant exactly what he wrote.
Okay. When you step back from the shouting, Roland Martin's argument lands because it is rooted in patterns, not personalities. This isn't about one offensive comment or dismissing criticism as New York trash talk. Research on political leadership shows that when high-profile figures repeatedly personalize tragedy, it lowers public expectations of empathy and normalizes cruelty over time. Presidents don't simply mirror culture, they actively shape it. Data from the Pew Research Center shows that trust in government and civic institutions has steadily declined during the same period. Political rhetoric became more personal, vindictive, and performative. That context explains why Roland keeps returning to institutions. Political scientists have long argued that democracy survives not only through laws, but through unwritten norms such as restraint, respect for office, and knowing when silence is appropriate. When leaders abandon those norms, polarization accelerates. Comparative studies suggest countries where leaders publicly demean opponents during moments of grief experience deeper social fractures, weaker civic trust, and greater political volatility. The familiar both sides trash talk defense misses a crucial distinction. Private citizens venting online do not carry the authority of the state. Presidents do. Their words signal what behavior is acceptable. Historians often point to figures like Lyndon Johnson, who deliberately altered his public tone once he entered the presidency, understanding the office demanded elevation rather than escalation. This also isn't about shock anymore. Polling consistently shows Americans believe political discourse has become harsher and less humane. That shift was not accidental. Roland's argument isn't partisan outrage.
How do you address
Hamas
the percentage
and violent extremism
of radical Islam
Piers.
that wants to
Hey, Piers.
destroy the
let
West?
me bring in Roland.
Just tell me how to address
Let me
that,
bring in Roland.
Wajad.
Let me bring in Roland.
Piers,
You don't have an
last
answer,
week I
do
was at-
you?
Piers, Jillian, I've had to sit here
I'll
and listen to
take
y'all
it.
go back and forth. Can I please make this point?
Please,
Thank
yes,
you.
absolutely.
Piers,
Yes.
last week I was in Montgomery, Alabama for the 7th anniversary of the Montgomery bus boycott. And there is a National Memorial for Peace and Justice and Legacy Museum there that documents, that commemorates the documented 4,400 lynchings in this country. And there were more that took place. As an African American, when I understand what it means when you have a people who have a bullseye on their back, who are being targeted. I understand that. And so it is absolutely shameful that you cannot be at a Hanukkah celebration and it gets interrupted by mass violence because of two evil individuals. But I'm saying two evil individuals for a reason. Because under the legitimate FBI leadership of Christopher Wray, they said that the greatest threat in America is white domestic terrorism. So when I listen to people like Senator Tommy Tuberville talk about, getting rid of all Muslims in this country, as an African American, I then say, what about white Christians? Because when we look at violence in this country, mass shootings in this country, who typically commits them? And so I think anybody has to be very careful to not go down this path of, oh my God, all of them, when I, as an African American, who's also, Jillian, please allow me to finish. When I, as an African American, who's also a Christian, can literally look at the history of white Christians committing violence. And so what we cannot do is say, oh, it is the religion that's driving it, as opposed to it is these evil individuals. Piers, you properly talked about guns and how Australia, after that mass shooting, you said in the 90s, how they targeted. But the fact that they were successful should be a lesson to America. How about you also try that to deal with mass shootings in this country? And so it is wrong for us to go down this path of condemning an entire religion, condemning an entire group of people, whether they are Muslim, whether they are Jewish, whether they are Christian. What we have to recognize is there are evil people in this world, and our job is to root out evil and then how they impact people. But it's crazy to attack an entire religion and target.
I agree.
Roland Martin's position feels grounded because it aligns with what the data actually shows about violence and political responsibility. Over the last decade, reports from the FBI and the Anti-Defamation League consistently find that the majority of domestic terror incidents in the United States are linked to far-right extremist ideologies, not religious minorities. That matters because blaming whole communities doesn't just miss the problem, it actively makes it worse by pushing people into defensive corners instead of focusing on real threats. What often gets ignored in these conversations is scale and power. When public figures single out religions or ethnic groups, history shows it increases hate crimes, not safety. After major political figures used anti-Muslim rhetoric in the mid-2010s, FBI hate crime data showed measurable spikes against Muslim Americans, even though they represent a tiny fraction of violent crime perpetrators. The same pattern has appeared with anti-Semitic violence, which has surged in recent years despite Jewish Americans being disproportionately victims rather than perpetrators of violence. Roland's broader point is also backed by international comparisons. Countries that focus on gun access, radicalization pipelines, and online extremism consistently reduce mass violence more effectively than countries that rely on cultural blame. Australia's post-1996 reforms didn't work because they demonized a group. They worked because they targeted access, accountability, and prevention. Jillian's framing may sound emotionally satisfying, but it doesn't solve anything. Broad condemnation creates noise, not solutions. If the goal is safety, evidence demands precision. You go after individuals, networks.
What it really means to me, at its purest, is that if you come to, say, the United States or the UK or Australia from another country, particularly another country which has a very different culture. So say you come from the Middle East and you come to live in America, live in London, live in Sydney, whatever. The word assimilate means that you do your best to be part of the new culture you're joining. What you don't do is put a drawbridge up and start your own culture within the culture of the country you go to at the expense of that nation's culture. I mean, at its purest...
That's not true!
Well, that is true.
Okay, if what you just described is the case, then the Italians, the Jewish, the Polish, every group that came to the United States did exactly what you just said. They had own communities, own culture. So, do you understand the history of America?
Yes, and I also understand that in the
and what you described.
Well, I don't remember the Italians in America setting up their own rival court system, for example, unless I missed it.
Muslims haven't either.
Did they?
Yeah, no.
Because in the UK, we now have nearly 100 Sharia courts have been set up. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't remember that happening with any of the Poles or the Italians in the United States. That's what I'm talking about, Cenk.
Okay. All right. So what I can't stand is the double standard. So if, for example, Jillian said, what if 10% Muslims are violent? Okay. If you said that about Jewish people and you said, look, I'm not worried about most Jews, but, if 10% of Jews are treacherous and serve Israel first and betray their country. Hold on. No, Jillian. Now you let me talk.
Gaza?
Okay? No, you let me talk. No. Okay. So now, if you said 10% of Jews are the real problem, everyone would be outraged, and rightfully so. That's not the right thing to say. But people say it blithely about Muslims, like we don't count, and it's no big deal to discriminate against us. Now let's talk about immigration. You fill out forms. If some idiot fills out a form and says, I'm for ISIS, I'm for Muslim extremism, and you don't want to let him into the country, of course you don't let him into the country. But now we're talking about Muslims at large. Wait, that's a totally different thing. By the way, are we doing the same thing for Israelis? Are we having them fill it? Hold on. Are we asking them to fill out a form? Are you against murdering 20,000 Palestinian kids? And if they say, no, I am for it, and I like what Israel did, are we banning them because they're sick, violent extremists who don't mind the murder of 20,000 children? No, of course not. In fact, when you look at the forms right now, what we're asking in entering our country is, what are your views about Israel? Who gives a damn what their views about Israel are when they're coming to America? Why are we asking about a different country? What I care most about is American sovereignty.
Watching this unfold, Roland Martin and Cenk Uyghur's points stand out because they are grounded in evidence rather than fear. The statistics are clear. Domestic terrorism in the US is overwhelmingly linked to white supremacist and far-right extremists. According to multiple FBI reports over the past decade, white men account for the majority of mass shootings, terrorist plots, and racially motivated attacks. That's not about condemning a whole race. It's about targeting the real sources of violence, something Piers Morgan often sidesteps in his framing. Another layer often missed is the historical context. America has a long record of systemic violence committed by white Christian men, from lynchings to school shootings, whereas blanket demonization of Muslim or immigrant communities ignores the fact that extremist actors are statistically a tiny fraction of their populations. Studies from the Center for Strategic and International Studies show that while radicalization exists in all groups, violent outcomes in the US overwhelmingly come from far-right networks, not religious minorities. Furthermore, Martin and Uyghur highlight how double standards fuel prejudice. Discrimination against Muslims is often normalized in ways that would provoke outrage if applied to Jews, Christians, or any other group. Policies that focus on assimilation alone fail to address structural risks. History shows that immigrant communities like Italians, Jews, and Poles maintained cultural identity while integrating without creating violent enclaves. In short, Roland and Cenk's stance isn't alarmism, it's evidence-based. The focus must be on real threats, individual accountability, and fair treatment rather than scapegoating entire communities. Addressing violence in America requires nuance, data, and an honest look at where danger actually comes from. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.